apprendre. Elle a dit. Pour voir si ça fonctionne, ouais. Et en fait, il faut que tu montes comme ça. You have to.
Oui.
So, yesterday when we started, we just moved this a little bit to make some sounds.
What should I do?
You do just this. C'est parti. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. So the conversation will be held in English today, with my poor English.
Not true.
But we're gonna make it. So thank you for being here. This is the third conversation of the week, part of the program that I've been invited to curate. So my name is Alice Dusapin. I am an editor and publisher curator, and I was invited by the Fondation Ricard and Paris Internationale to think about a program for this art fair, Paris Internationale. And for the second edition, last year, I developed under a phrase that I will read, a program with a number of guests. And it was talks with and about artistic practice, publishing and curating in non-institutional environment and spaces. So this year I add a new category, which is collecting in non-institutional environment, and it will be tomorrow. So last year we welcome curator, publisher and artists such as Dorothée Perret from Paris and Dopé Press, Evan Moffitt from But Magazine, Anna Collin also, who is the co-founder of Open School East in London, but also Alexandre Estrella and Anna Baliza from Ofaro, which is a project space in Lisbon, the project space Giselle also, who has a booth here, and finally Anthony Huberman from Journo Poetry System, which is the John Journo Foundation in New York. So the idea behind this program is to share through conversation with curator, publisher and artist the experiments of people who have founded and managed non-institutional spaces, and what does it mean, what is this signature, and how we try to make things differently somehow. And to give a little bit of context of this program, I am one of the co-founder of a magazine called Octopus Nuts, a publishing house called Daisy, and a project space called Ampersand, so 3 non-profit projects that I had the chance to build and follow for more than 10 years. And I have recently joined an institution in the south of France called Villa-Arson, where I run the publishing department. So I have one fit in an institution and the other in a non-profit environment. And I think there is very different methodology and limits and different joys. And so the idea is to try to understand what they are and showing highlights. So today I have the chance to have Helena Papadopoulos with me. So Helena, you are a curator and a writer and the founder of Radio Athènes. I added Institute for the Advancement of Contemporary Visual Culture that you have on the website, I like. You recently presented the work of Beatrice Bonino, who will have a show in Paris soon. And you have currently a group exhibition titled Her, featuring works, and sorry if I misspell some, Marisia Parouzel, Joséphine Pride, Marietta Mavrocordatou, Esther Tieker, and George Turkovasilis, and 2 very interesting websites also to talk about Radio Athènes, radioathènes.org and Radio Athènes TV, that we will also look today. So maybe to start the conversation, how do we build a project like Radio Athènes? What is the need? Somehow I feel like there is always a need when we start a project. So what was the idea behind Radio Athènes?
I think the need was to be among kindred spirits, and I feel like I am here among kindred spirits like you. We're doing very similar things, and so thanks for the invitation, and Paris Internationale and Pernod Ricard. It feels very nice to be in Paris. It's very welcoming. I see friends here from Athens and Paris. Thanks for coming. So I think as an exhibition maker, you try to find ways to put things together and to have relationships with artists and writers. And a way to do it is by starting a space. Radio Athènes has a particularity because it's not an institution, of course. It's not a gallery space. It's quite idiosyncratic. Over the years, we've done many different things that include sound projects, exhibitions, publications. Actually, everything I dreamed of doing, we have been doing it. But let's say the ICA in London in the early 90s was a great model for me, because I discovered so many things. You could, watch films, you could hear talks, you could see exhibitions, you could, buy interesting titles in their bookshop. And so that was pretty much my idea, but of course in a mini scale. Also, the idea to have an international dialogue is crucial for me, and how to mix local positions with international positions. And I think at this stage, all of us, we feel that when we do something, we're talking to a much larger audience than just our local audience. And I don't mean that so much in the way that pictures are shared, like Instagram or the internet. Actually, because you ask me right now about the website, the first website of Radio Athènes was basically text-based with just an asterisk, a speaking asterisk, which introduces who we are. And it was designed 10 years ago by Dexter Sinister, that is David Reinford and Stuart Bailey, who I had worked with when I lived in Berlin. And so we were sitting down with both of them and saying, I'm starting this space, I'm calling it Radio Athènes. Why Radio Athènes? Because radio is a transmission of signals in free space. And I thought that, having an art space is about being free to communicate ideas. And also I thought that, okay, we can broadcast from wherever we are. So we can be in Athens, we can be in this space, we can be at another space, we can be in another city. And we were sharing both with David and Stuart our we're a bit skeptical about the internet and how everything looks different when you see it on a website or when you see something on Instagram. It either looks nicer or worse than it actually is. And so we thought, okay, we'll have an imageless site, because another point of having a space is for people to come together and to talk about what you see, to exchange ideas, information. I think that's very important. That's how you build relationships, friendships, or that's how things can continue. And so we had that website for a while, but then people kept asking, can you send me pictures from that exhibition because I missed it, or people were curious about the program. So we had another conversation with David 5 years later, and we developed another site that runs in parallel to radioathene.org. There's another one called radioathene.tv, which has mostly images. It's also a bit idiosyncratic because it's like a slideshow. Each exhibition is documented. We upload the images, then there's captions that you can take on and off.
Yeah, it takes some like minutes to understand.
Yeah, how it
I like
works.
it's nice because it feels like
Once you understand, it's really easy. You know, there's the channels to the left.
yeah,
There's an index, yeah, and you can
choose.
a channel. But then you have to be very patient because you cannot scroll through images. You have to be,
Yeah,
you have to sit through the whole slideshow. I
And
think
you
a
can-
nice
you
way
can
to do
hide-
it is
yeah.
when you have a glass of wine or tea and you're in front of your screen, just let it, play. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's that's nice. No, I think, and we were talking about this, like how to build the program and how to make it public and what do we show and what do we hide. And it's, I mean, I love this idea. I mean, sometimes that was the subject last year. We are doing a lot of great projects, but are very bad, for example, at communication. So I think like what you did with Radio Athènes org and TV is very interesting because it's like the first was we couldn't see. We had to go there and to physically be in the space to understand the project. And the other one requires slowness. We have to wait. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's one of your signature because it tells also a lot about how we eat and how do we say? I always say eat images. I don't know if it's English to say that, but we see so much show online. I mean, I lived in Lisbon for 8 years, and now I'm in Nice, and I don't see a lot of shows. And I consume, that was the word, I consume a lot of image online, and I think that was an interesting reaction and proposition with this profusion of images. So my question then maybe is, how did you build the program, and how do we build a program? I think that's a hard
It's
question.
a good question. It's a hard question because I really don't know. I think it's quite organic. Very often it's through other artists, through other curators who might make a suggestion, or sometimes it might be an obsession that will manifest itself 10 years later. For example, because you're on that particular channel, when I was studying in London, I was completely obsessed by the work of Waltz, German artist who lived in France for many years. He's supposed to be one of the fathers of art informel, his paintings and drawings, but I was obsessed with his photography. So I had this in mind. Then I had seen a show in New York by Eileen Quinlan, a contemporary American photographer, and at some point I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to pair the two? And I approached Eileen with this proposition. She was very happy to work together on that. And then I found ways to reach the museum in Dresden that holds Waltz archive. And after a couple of years of research and communication with them, they also agreed to give us work on loan. So, I mean, yeah, this was a deep-seated desire that manifested itself, I don't know, maybe 15 years later. But I do feel that the program is a bit like a film, so it's a sequence, and I think that unconsciously I wanted to kind of work like the previous show to have some connection to the next, and so on, for some kind of flow. But I don't think that I could explain what kind of flow that would be exactly. But yeah, it's quite organic, I would say.
Yeah, that's why it's.
Yeah.
we were talking about without being to stick too much to the subject, but this idea that sometimes a structure, for example, when you work in an institution, you have to do like 3 or 4 shows. It's written. There is a way of working, a way of a frame of time to work with the artist or to archive if the artist passed away, and just the way you mature and the process of an exhibition is interesting, I think, because we had the same at Ampersand. It's like sometimes we were working on a book with someone, and then suddenly there is a series, and you think after 2 years, like, oh, we could show it, and then do this, and then project arrives when they are ready, and not when the institution say the opening is in 1 month, you know. And I think that's something I think. Is somehow a signature or something significative, I don't know, for project space, I feel, and that you explain somehow that it's more organic.
Yeah, and also, you know, obviously you have a completely different speed and rhythm to that of an institution, or even a sort of bigger gallery that needs to have a different kind of programming. But, for example, something that just came to mind, we had a collaboration with Thomas Boutou that you know very well, and After 8 Books is also very close to. I invited him to do a radio show, and then with one of his students, Teddy Costa at the time, and then this led to a project that we launched maybe a year and a half later, which was called All Collected Voices, and this actually happened in response to Documenta 14 that happened both in Athens and Kassel. So it's organic, and at the same time, you know, you respond to other things that happen around you.
Yes. I'm going to read this text that has been written on you that I think it's nice. It's like, I would say she. She thinks a lot about what her contemporaries make, but is also interested in flashbacks and eclipses, and in approaching exhibition as unfinished projects, in the sense that everything is to be continued and take another form: a book, a record, a conversation, a trip, a friendship, and other text. I think that says a lot also on how Radio Athens work, and I like this idea to projects to be continued. Maybe I think that would be great to talk about records and the way you make different generation and how they communicate and how make it very contemporary somehow. Can you talk about records?
Yeah, sure. In the last few years, for some reason, certain estates of artists have kind of fallen on our lap, and I'm saying on our lap because for records, I collaborate with 2 other curators' spaces in Athens, Maya Tunda and Andreas Melas. And it also happened completely by chance. We didn't go out, you know, we didn't have an idea saying, oh, it'd be very interesting to show historical artists. But it happened differently in each case, because now we sort of work closely with the estate of Biadavu, Pandelis Xagoraris, George Turkovasilis, and Christos Zivelos. So the circumstances for each are quite different, but in Greece, the idea of an estate is not very developed yet. There's so many interesting artists who have been overlooked or forgotten, and we have, you know, just two national museums, 3 actually. So, you know, they can't really work with every artist that has passed through our geography, and so the idea was to contextualize them again and to show them alongside other either contemporary artists or other historical international artists. That was very important for us. And so this entails in certain cases, really organizing the archive, as in the case of George Turco-Vassilios. Actually, this book just came out. We are very excited about it. It's going to launch here at After 8 Books tomorrow at 4 p.m. Yeah, in his case, we had to completely organize everything. We're still organizing it.
But pragmatically, you mean you also have you work with the archive itself, open boxes and.
Oh yeah,
and okay.
yeah. Because
At Radio Athènes.
not at Radio Athènes, at a space that his family has put all the material. So we go there, not on a regular basis. I mean, we go whenever we can, and try to organize it, and then scan images and try to create categories, but loose categories, and then we mount exhibitions when we can. And now we just made this book with Julie Peters. I don't know if I mentioned that already. Who's I think a brilliant designer, someone with whom we have very good communication, just as with Stuart and David.
And maybe I think this idea to work with an estate, and we were talking about this yesterday with Andrea Anderson from River Institute, who works also a lot on archive and how to make the archive alive. Yeah. See, hard to say, alive. And like I think it's the gesture and the fact that you work with very also young artists. I think that's something that's how I encounter Radio Athènes also. But I think quickly yesterday we were talking about the responsibility, to put work in front of another, and how you when you do this outside of I don't know, an university or an estate that is very established in relation with an institution or a very extensive research, like I don't say it's right or wrong, but I think this unprofessional way of making the archive alive is very special. And so maybe as you did, you have a booth here with records, and can you explain a little bit like how you create the connection between two generations?
Yeah, here we're showing the work of Biadabu, who's an artist who was active in the late 60s all the way to 1996 when she passed away. And here we're showing some drawings from the 70s. She was influenced by her conversations with her husband, who was an artist and also a professor of mathematics at the university. So she was exposed, to theories, mathematical theories, and cybernetics, information technologies, which were very new things at the time. And she translated them into her art, and basically trying to create a poetics of communication between completely different disciplines. And in a way, I think it's always nice to make work, historical work, be more relevant if you pair it with contemporary artists, their voices. So Ray Actagon, who's an artist I showed at Radio Athènes in 2016, and who has become a very good friend since, because that's the point, to create friendships. We had a conversation, and there was this proposal for her to respond to the work, and she said, yes, I would love to. I really like Biadavu's work. And she responded with a series called the Clip-On series. I mean, I don't think that there's an exact correspondence. It's a very loose response. But I feel that sometimes people coming to this presentation get confused. They think, oh, is this old work? Is this new work? And it's nice to see that something that is historical material can seem fresh, and something that is made in 2025 has a patina or a feel that it could be older work.
And do you think, also, sorry again, I speak about ampersand, but it's just this back and forth of like, for example, there is 2-3 historical figures that we encounter, and then we became specialized on the archive, and then it was not the idea, you know, and then we have a responsibility towards the archive now, and somehow some of like Patty Hill or Wolfgang Storkler or Ben Porter, we started to put them in conversation with different artists, but over the years, multiple times. So, for example, with the work with Biadavu, like, is it a work that we will see again towards the years? You know, when you start to work with an estate, is it a figure that will stay and will reappear in the program, like?
You mean in general, not
Yes,
with
in general, because
because
thinking of records, like I'm like how the fact that it's linked to historical figure in estate, how it will influence Radio Athènes program, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it's pretty new as a development, but I think it's wonderful to start from something very specific and see how it can open up and include many different things. Because every time you think of another association, or maybe you invite an artist to respond to Biadavu, and then you end up doing a solo, of that other artist. I don't know. I think the aim is also to make the work visible to other curators, institutions, so that they can take it and do what they want with it. I think that's also very important to be able to show work that you feel is interesting, and see how others interpret it.
Yeah, to introduce.
Yeah.
And maybe it's always the question of economy. I think it's something that interests me, not to dig too much into the complexity of it. But since you're a non-profit organization, like what does it mean, and how Radio Athènes sustain like the model? I think it's for people who wants to build a project. It's interesting to know the recipe.
I when it started in 2015, I had the hope that it could be a non-profit organization, and that would be able to find support through other public organizations or private foundations that were set up in order to help the art ecology. I think in the beginning this was so, but slowly in Greece the landscape changed pretty radically, and there was less and less support. So even in the beginning I knew that this would perhaps be an issue, so our legal setup allows us also to place works when we can. And this is also a source of income. In the case of Tuko Vasilis, we try to release some works slowly, and with the revenue we can continue the research, the digitization of the work. So again, we don't have in Greece the same conditions as in Northern Europe, Central Europe. I know that it's becoming very hard here as well, but for us it has always been quite difficult. The contemporary art sector has not been a priority. So we try to make it sustainable in various ways.
And earlier, when we were having coffee, we were talking about and I wonder how useful it is to share this, but this idea of frustration, because one of my questions was what would you need to continue? What would be the things you will need to sustain 5-10 more years? And that's a question I will ask. But first, I was also thinking that. Somehow the fact that it's fragile creates something in the way we work that is special. And I was telling this anecdote maybe that I will share, but for example, with Ampersand, we never got any fundings. It was a studio, so we paid the rent. And when we had shows, even though it was artists, sometimes we didn't know, we asked the gallery if they were okay if we pay an EasyJet and just take it under the arm. And then the artists were staying at home because we had an extra room, and then we were doing dinner in the way we could and buying beer very late in a shop downstairs, you know, and the sense of community that it creates with this lack of money is quite interesting, even in the exchange, how up to which point you're able to talk and in which way you're able to talk. And one day we got a grant and we were able to pay an hotel for the artist and restaurants, and we shipped the work with frame, and we signed a contract, and something was missing. It was comfort was beautiful. We're like, oh, we pay it, it's beautiful. But there was something, and I don't say, because I don't want to say that precarity is great at all, because I think it's a struggle. But yeah, I answer my part, but I'm like, how do you keep up with frustration and comfort?
Well, I think with Radio Athènes, because I also have a background in the gallery world. I started a gallery in Berlin, and then I had a gallery in Athens for a few years. So I did keep that professionalism into Radio Athènes. So from the beginning, everything worked properly, like, consignments, shipping, because it's important for the works to be safeguarded. Of course, if you can bring something in your suitcase, of course, I have nothing against that. One should do it. But I was always trying to find ways for the artists to feel comfortable, secure, and to provide everything we could, but at the same time without having a distance, because there was no distance. It's a very small team. And so I think that it's hard to actually lose the proximity, even if you have
professional skills.
This situation, if you keep it, small, I suppose.
Do you think the scale also of Radio Athènes is something that, you change? You have a new space since a year.
There is a new space that is actually a space we are sharing with two galleries in Athens, Eleftheria Tseliou and Hot Wheels. And actually, this came out of the blue, literally, because Radio Athènes is in the center of Athens. It's in a beautiful, in my opinion, Bauhaus building from the 30s. It's in the ground floor. It's very small but tall. It has a terrazzo floor. It has very interesting texture. And I've always loved seeing it transform with every project. But because the neighborhood has become very popular, and there's many Airbnbs and hotels and restaurants, the usual stuff that happens with tourism. I was telling friends, I would like to have the opportunity to maybe have another space somewhere that is less busy. And a friend of mine called me one day and said, I have a friend who just finished renovating this incredible building near the Archaeological Museum in Athens, and before she finds the perfect tenant, she would like to work with art spaces in Athens and give it a shot. So she gave us space for 6 months. We're still there. We have another project to go, and of course we're all secretly hoping that this will continue. Mostly because of the fact that the neighborhood is very quiet, and also the experience of being in a space that you're sharing with others is really a gift. It makes you feel that you're part of a bigger thing. You can share so much. And of course, it also allows you to articulate certain ideas because you have more space. Not that this changes dramatically. I feel that I'm happy to do a project in a space as big as that and a larger space. So I don't think it makes a huge difference, but it's nice to cohabit with others.
Yeah, we were talking about the idea of the community, to create a community, and how to address a program. And I think the fact that you said now it's a shared space. I mean, I just wanted to ask you about the community you have built around your program, and how it is in Athens for that, because I've never been to your space. I just experienced your program through the two websites that are hiding kind of the space, and I always wonder how we build a community and how we show up to each other. Is there particularly in Athens?
Well, in Athens, I think it's like anywhere else in the world. You're very good friends with some of the people in the art community. You're less so with others. Some things bring you together. Some things bring you apart. But we are very friendly with many other people running spaces, with many artists, with many curators, but also I have the feeling that our relationships are not just local, but international, and I think it's really important to build a community somehow, and this happens through collaborations, through friendships, through dinners,
and so making books. Maybe we could talk about also how. So this is a project you will present tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this is under Radio Athens' name, or
no, this is actually published
collaboration
by Bill, which is a magazine that Julie Peters edits and designs. And so when we were talking with Julie about doing something on Turko Vasilis, because she published his work in one of the Bill issues a few years ago, we thought, okay, how we're going to make that happen? We can make applications. Nothing really materialized, but then we all decided to sort of contribute. His estate is contributing, Radio Athens is contributing, Melas Martinos, Aqua Ebom, and so Julie secured the distribution, which is crucial, and we made it happen. I mean, we just said, let's do it, and it happened. With a previous publication, which appeared 2 years later on the Vol Silene Quinlan show. It was published by Radio Athens and Sequence Press, who also contributed for its production and printing, and we fundraised by selling Polaroids by Eileen Quinlan. I mean, I think there is always a way, but of course, sometimes it might take a lot longer to find the funds, basically. Otherwise, there's. I think it's a great joy to put books together.
Yes. Thank you very much, Helena.
Thank you very much.
We have.
Yes.
And we are here if you have questions.